And Kevin McDonald, I give you the floor, sir.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Alan, for the invitation, and thank you, audience, for dialing in. Hopefully, we can make this very interactive. I think this is a kind of an exciting topic. It's also kind of a frightening topic. Alan, when we were chatting, you'd mentioned some statistics around ransomware. Can you pitch in on that?
Yes, I just got a notification from SC Magazine that said in a recent study, 94% of all phishing expeditions, that's PHISHING, contain ransomware, which I find as an astounding area. Apparently the ransomware attacks are very, very successful, and the hackers are moving aggressively into that area. While we were talking, I just got another notification that suddenly Skype is becoming a brand new area for malware and ransomware attacks also. So please be aware.
Right, exactly, and I think one of the questions that comes up, and I was chatting with some folks yesterday, and it's just what exactly is ransomware, and I don't think even with this sort of this becoming a really it's a hot topic around I think around the it's a hot topic maybe in IT or after you've been attacked. It's a really hot topic. What this sort of attack does is in try to put it in business terms, is that it holds your data hostage, and it will the attacks can come from an email that you click on that looks like it's a real email from somebody you may know. Or it can be from visiting a website, or as Alan just mentioned, it could come from a Skype session where somebody opens, "Hi, I'm here to tell you about Publishers Clearinghouse, and I want to start this Skype session with you so we can talk about how we can distribute the check, and then I'd like you to download this document, which will give us the release so we can release your information to the public." So basically, somebody who gets that and sees, oh, I've won the Publishers Clearinghouse, now I can click on this link and soon all my financial worries are over for the rest of my life, and that could be an attack. Once that's infiltrated in your system, it can come in and scramble all your personal documents. It can scramble your 2014 summer vacation pictures. And basically, once they're scrambled, they're very difficult, if impossible, to unscramble without paying the ransom. And these ransoms range from $500 per computer to up to whatever they think the market will bear.
No, Kevin, you just said whatever the market will bear. So basically, it seems that these guys are actually behaving like business people. And they're almost like they're salesmen or not. So
exactly that. It is actually sort of a really twisted business model. There was a study done, I think middle part of last year, where they actually asked the hackers, "You're hacking for a living. How much does it cost you to get into the business?" And so they were saying, "Well, it's about $3,000 roughly. My equipment, everything I'm buying from the attack systems and kits." So they spend about $3,000 to set up their small business, and then the next question is, well, how much are you making? So on average, average hacker was reporting about $28,000 a year. So it's for a part-time job, that's basically about 1,000% return on investment. It's not a bad, other than the fact it's illegal. They are following business models. So that is sort of that's kind of the independent model. But what's happening now with ransomware, because it bypasses a lot of the traditional high-tech security controls, it's actually becoming quite a bit more effective. And because of this, it's getting the interest of organized crime. And now we're seeing organized criminal groups that are distributing ransomware, and the statistics now are astounding. The average return was $28,000. Now we're seeing on average, those returns are approaching $100,000 per attacker campaign. So this is showing a couple of things. One, it's a very effective attack, and that people are paying the ransoms. And two, there has been very few law enforcement engagements that are actually putting the bad actors in jail, and because there's more money at stake, it's attracting more every day. So I'd say all of those sort of point to kind of Alan's statistic is that this is a really it is a really heavily high risk threat environment, and it's increasing every day.
One thing I came across yesterday, the day before, was it was a follow-up, or it was an article based on the Hollywood Presbyterian ransomware attack, and some researchers were following the conversations on Eastern European hacker forums, and the quote-unquote professional hackers were actually quite upset that somebody had done this, had attacked a hospital, and the whole gist of the article was honor among thieves and quote-unquote moral hackers, not white hat hackers, but moral thieves. And it was quite an interesting read about how a certain aspect of the community actually tries to behave with a certain bit of moral restraint, ethical restraint, where they don't attack hospitals, they don't attack anything within the CIS, what used to be the Soviet Union. So it's an interesting blend of professional and criminal, and to your point, it's very much like a organized crime. So.
Right, exactly. I'm in the realm of, is that going to dampen activity? I would say that the actual answer to that is no. Even if there are a certain number of moral hackers that are sort of fighting back, the lure of this sort of attack and the odds of getting caught are fairly low. So the ease of the attack is becoming more and more organized. There's actually there is a business model within that same sort of dark, loosely not unorganized groups perhaps, where they're offering these sorts of attacks as a service. So attacking as a service is now becoming sort of part of the business model, where they'll either hire sort of stringers to go spread ransomware, and then the ransomware goes back, and every successful attack, they get a percentage of the revenue. Or the other side of the fence, you might go and there are organizations that are saying that you hire us, we'll go attack, and you get all the funds. You just pay us up front. So there's certainly a very complicated business model evolving out on the dark parts of the internet. And the other part that you mentioned was the attacks on the hospitals are actually becoming more and more frequent. There was sort of the one that sort of raised above the surface was Hollywood Presbyterian. That was shortly followed by a hospital in Kentucky. There's also been some high-profile attacks on a chain of hospitals in Germany, and then most recently, MedStar here in Washington D.C. was attacked, and all of these are crippling for those organizations. Hollywood Presbyterian was down something like 10 days. MedStar, I think, was not quite as heavily affected, but they did have to do some lockdowns and put in manual methods for a few days. So manual methods in a hospital when your life's at stake versus when somebody wants to know what your blood type is and it's an emergency. These are actually fast approaching life-threatening events. Life safety. So it's definitely a serious threat.
Kevin, I've heard this is Alan. I've heard there's different types of attacks. There's the attack that holds your information for ransom until you pay, usually with Bitcoin, and then there's a type that gives you a time frame, and every day that you go beyond that time frame, they start to delete a certain percentage of your information to give you a little push to be able to pay faster. And then someone told me about another one called, I think it's called Jigsaw, that starts to automatically delete data on a regular basis until you pay up.
Wow, that is scary. I had not, I confess, I have not heard of the Jigsaw attack, but I have heard of the shot clock, basically, where the first indication. This is a very different sort of attack. Most of the time, when folks are talking about sophisticated cyber attacks, the hacker goes out of their way to cover their tracks, and once they've infiltrated the system, their main objective is to stay there and be as quiet as possible. And the typical hacker, if they are successful, before they're discovered, in most cases, they can actually dwell inside your networks for up to 6 months before the average security apparatus discovers them. And that may be triggered by them finally executing an attack and stealing the crown jewels of your organization. So this is different because they will actually, as soon as they've come into your system, they've become more and more sophisticated. They are, like you were saying, evolving over days, if not weeks, if not days, of fine-tuning their attacks. They're, like you were saying, the shot clock it was sort of the first iteration of this, is that it will tell you immediately that we've taken over your system. Instead of dwelling, they really don't care about the data or pulling the data off the system. They just scramble it in place. So that's one difference between this and the traditional advanced persistent threat. The second one is that shot clock. First they announce, and sometimes they will actually announce, there's something terribly wrong with your computer. Please call admin. And so then when admin comes to look at the computer and they log on with their credentials, they have just now given the hacker the advanced credentials that they need to attack the rest of the network. So that's kind of step 2 in their attack matrix. And then step 3 is once they've attacked enough of the system, then they launch the Bitcoin. Please put in 20 Bitcoins or 500 Bitcoins or however many Bitcoins they think that organization will be able to pay. And that at that point, they may start a clock timer that says, if you don't pay within 48 hours, this will double. Or if you don't pay in 48 hours, we will start deleting your files. Or if you don't start paying now, we'll start deleting them randomly. So so all of those are very serious, events, especially if the organization hasn't completely 1,000% done their best on backups.
Isn't this kind of a threat that's isolated to big businesses and major hospitals and stuff like that?
I was actually talking with a graphics designer yesterday, and it was just brought up ransomware as just sort of part of the conversation. And she said, "Oh, that happened to my girlfriend." That just as an aside, and it's like it actually this threat they really don't care whether it's in some cases they're directing it towards large organizations. Because like a hospital hospital has sensitive information, hospital has life safety at risk. So attacking a hospital, they're playing the odds that the hospital may pay up before they actually try to, they're really looking for somebody to pay the ransom and move on to the next target. But they're also spanning out to consumers too. So if they can get 1,000 consumers infected and some percentage of those pay up, then they're happy with that as well. So they're not necessarily discriminating on their targets. It's just the larger organizations, they may ask for more money.
Interesting.
I came across a Fortune 1000 company because I'm dealing with some of the consultants, and they started asking me all kinds of questions about ransomware, and I don't know what possessed me, but I said, "Is your client been hacked? Are they under an attack?" And they said yes, they had to pay $200,000.
Wow.
Now the question for them becomes, what do they do to prevent this from happening again? Because they're very aware that these hackers are rather sophisticated, and if they find people who pay, they leave some malware in the system because they now know that that client is a payer, and they'll revisit that client somewhere in the next 4 to 5 months, maybe sooner, maybe later.
So we've talked about what this is, what ransomware is, and how we can get it, and how it's basically targeting everybody. What can we do about it? What can anybody do about it?
That's the what is that? The $64,000 question?
Exactly. So I guess that brings us to the other half of the equation.
Right. Well, actually, now that Alan's shared that, I think it's actually the $500 to $200,000 question, depending on which attacker is successful. $200,000, I think, for what I've heard, that is probably the high watermark on ransomwares, but ransoms paid. But I'm sure there are higher amounts out there. The what can you do question, and I think that's where it really comes back to the IT governance side of the house, is that the FBI had issued a notice in I think it may have been June of here recently, where they basically said, well, it's in some cases you may just have to pay the ransom. You know, if there's nothing that if you really don't have any recourse and those files are very sensitive and dear to you, it may be that's the best solution. And obviously some organizations are saying that as well. If you think about it, if it is a large organization, and if you think about the average, just as sort of a ballpark, if you think one person's productivity is worth $1,000 a day to that organization, and it's 200 employees, you are suddenly at $200,000 if you're only down a day. So if it goes to 2 days, then that's $400,000. So that cutting losses, that $200,000 starts looking attractive at that rate. Typically, they're using sophisticated encryption. And in some cases, the encryption keys have been broken and shared, and then no harm, no foul. But in a lot of cases, they're becoming more and more sophisticated. They're amping up the level of encryption to the point that they can't be broken even by the highest, most powerful supercomputers. So at that point, you really have to fall back on how well are you prepared. And what is your governance model? And that's where that gets back to the maybe the other part of the advice is that preparing from the standpoint of making adequate preventive measures and making sure that that's done across your organization is really what we traditionally call IT governance. And the larger the organization, the more difficult it is sometimes to see what's going on in some of the subsidiaries or remote offices or determining what those things are. And that's really what the prime points of the FBI guidance is that number one is just have people become aware. But past that, it starts going into a long list of technical things that the organization should already be doing. But sometimes, in a lot of cases, based on my experience from going out in the field and conducting assessments, and I'm sure from other folks around the table's experience as well, is that I think there's a old adage that people respect what you inspect. So without those kind of inspections kind of scheduled as a part of the organization's DNA, it may not be they may not be prepared. And Alan, I don't know. Could you pitch in on that? Is that kind of what you're seeing as well?
I think Alan hit his mute button.
Oh, okay. I can keep talking. Or is there anybody in the audience who's got questions? So I'm not sure if that's a.
No, I'm sorry. I had it on mute. I was having an asthma.
You're having a very nice conversation with us.
I didn't want to sneeze at everybody.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Okay, well, I can keep talking.
That's okay. But we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing more and more education. We're seeing more and more presentations on what is a potential attack, what the average employee should be aware of, what they should be cognizant of. And at the response on the other side, we see the hackers becoming more sophisticated themselves. A new term I saw recently was a whale attack, when they really get 4 or 5 groups going after one big company or relatively small company because they think there's a lot there, and they find everything there is to know about everybody within the company, and then they start passing emails back and forth as if they're part of the stream of the normal communications on a daily basis. And invariably someone opens one up because they just responded to an email that a person sent. So it's getting more and more daunting on both sides because the more you train, the more they become aware of what you're doing. But training is step number one, heavy, detailed training. There are companies out there now that will mount a false attack against your organization, start training your employees as to what can be expected. We try and use a basic tenet that if any element of curiosity comes to you when you look at an email, delete. The hackers are very, very good at doing something that'll say, well, geez, maybe I should open that. And we try and train people that if there's any element of curiosity, don't open it. Even if it's from a friend, but there's 6 or 7 variations of the person's name, or there are other people on that, and it's not being expected. The simplest thing to do, and we do this all the time ourselves, we call up the person who has sent the email and ask, did you send me an email? So far, out of doing that for about 50 times, we've had about 3 or 4 no's, and we delete. So we're very quick to delete, and we recommend the same thing to clients. If it's that important, the sender will send you another one and say, how come you didn't respond? Or call you up and say, how come you're not responding? Better to have that phone call than to have an attack.
And also, you can take a look at the address itself, and make sure that it is coming from the person that it says it is. But I've got a couple questions that have come through. They'll start at the top. Basically, it says my offsite backups are safe from infection, right? Kevin?
So that you brought up that's a great question. And it's one of the things that I believe everyone sort of falls back on is that, oh, well, I've got backups, everything's fine. And the answer to that is it depends. There have been a few instances where, as an example, there was one individual that this was through just user error. They had all their backups, but all their backups were being done on the same system that they were actually using for the production system, and they inadvertently wound up deleting not only all of their production systems, but they wound up deleting all their backups. So having that next level of I think that's usually guidance to the IT department that you need to maintain offsite backups. that's a really good practice for a lot of different reasons. So that's kind of in that IT governance, 101 manual. But
Right.
in the case of our technical sort of how do we keep our own machines safe, there are some things that are in like the background of your average PC that says, oh, you want to make a backup or you want to turn on backups? Yes, and there's like a time machine, I think, on Apple systems, and then
Correct.
there's a thing called a backup shadow copy on Windows, which I won't go into a lot of the details. But what's happening now with the attackers at the most sophisticated end of the scale, as they're encrypting all of your personal files or your organization's files, they're also searching out those on-site backup copies for Apple Time Machine and those backup copies, and they delete or encrypt those as well. So the idea being that if you don't have any backups, you have fewer choices, and you're more likely to pay the ransom. And that can happen also in the larger organizations if they've got network backups that they're doing, and somehow the hacker gets to those. So the recommendation is, even if they are off-site, they truly need to be disconnected from the network while they are sort of in safe storage. Once you've got a successful backup, try to get that moved someplace where there's no way for anyone to actually get to it without taking some extraordinary steps.
So basically set up a sneaker net, so to speak.
Sneaker net's a good idea. A USB drive and having multiple USB drives might be okay for you and me, but the equivalent of that, and maybe in the corporate world, might be tape or making sure that the only capabilities that somebody has, there's some specifics that can be done in the technical world to make sure that everything goes to the backup, but nothing can be changed once the backup's done. So,
right. And also a good thing to do is to make sure that once the infection has been detected, and if you're running backups and such, you're pretty much not. The assumption is you're not going to be paying it. You're going to try and sterilize your systems and make sure that they are completely sterilized, and they don't kick into gear again the second you hook up your backups.
Yep, exactly, and that's part two, I guess. Is if we're talking about when we're talking about prevention, then there are a long list of things that are recommended, and every time I've seen someone who says, here's our recommended approach to ransomware, they have a completely different list or a slightly different list. So that speaks to a couple of things. One is there is an ever-growing and an evolving threat is normally what we kind of refer to as, well, they've tried one way and they got blocked, and then so they try to go another way. So really in this realm of IT governance, that's the whole purpose of that, is to really cover so many doors on the waterfront, or so many doors have to be locked, and they only need to get through on one. And the organization has to make sure that all of those are locked and tamped down, so it just lowers the risk to the organization.
Okay. Couple more questions. What do I do if the hacker doesn't live up to his side and provide the key? I'm assuming they mean after paying the ransom.
So there have been cases where the malware actually was, or the attack was bungled in a way, so that the files are encrypted, but their key is lost, and at that point, that is truly a catastrophe. It's the equivalent of your organization being hit by a hurricane, or your IT data center being hit by a hurricane. This is sort of a digital hurricane attack. You can't use the systems. Your only solution at that point is to go to backups. Now, if the backups are unavailable as well, I have worked with a organization in the past that had this kind of catastrophe, where their data, for not through an attack but through some failed IT governance, had scrambled all of their financial systems, and they had to basically pay to recreate a year's worth of financial data with using the old re-entry of invoices and payments and checks. And this is a fairly small organization that cost them $1 million.
So what you're saying is that there were some openings in the IT department after that one.
Yeah, there were some openings in the IT department, and then some, and beyond that. And beyond that, that's just a crippling amount of money to pay. So there are some that kind of gets into this. There's a lot of different things that are really at stake here. Malware is truly probably the highest risk, but the same sort of thing can happen inadvertently. But the idea is behind IT governance is making sure that all of those best practices, and the FBI lists is 10 or 15. If you go to some of the other risk management practices, there are like 18 different sort of things, large group activities that can be done to sort of help maintain security. And a lot of organizations may be sort of aware of those, but again, without that sort of pattern of inspection and reinspection, and IT departments are very busy. Everybody's really busy. Management's really busy. It's really hard to keep track of all that without just really having something formal in place.
Here's a good one that just came in. Can ransomware hide in cloud storage / backup environments? So I guess I'm talking Dropbox.
Yeah,
and
Absolutely. I've seen it happen many times that somebody will actually have their own portable storage environment. It could be a USB stick, or it can be a digital cloud-based system. And when they access their digital-based cloud system off of the corporate network, then at that point, that's when the malware can attack. So there are some things there, and that cloud-based system may or may not be scanned. So it's up to the organization, up to that individual sort of workstation. That's another recommendation from the FBI and everyone else is that you maintain your antivirus and your kind of threat detection software on your individual workstations. And that can help mitigate that some way in some cases. There's also some security sort of lockdown things that are recommended that can kind of hopefully reduce the amount of damage that they do. But in any case, yes, they can come in from the cloud as well.
Jeez. Okay. Another one. Ransomware in virtual machines. If my virtual machine is infected, will that cross over into my host machine?
That's a really good question. So just for just as an explanation, I think just that if I understand that question correctly, in a virtualized environment, there is usually a server that or a actual physical machine like a PC or a server-based thing that's hardware-based, and it's running its own software to maintain your organization's virtual servers. So for one hardware server running something like VMware or Zen, you could have a dozen virtual servers. So if the virtual server is running, it thinks it's its own environment. It's sort of like I am a server just like any other server, and if it gets infected, it could infect anything it's attached to. Generally speaking, for it to jump into the actual physical hardware and infect that, anything's possible. Anything's possible, but generally these attacks take the form of the least path of resistance. So, as an example, what Alan was talking about a bit earlier, it's a lot easier to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, "Hey, I'm with Accounts Payable. Can you give me the bank code? I've forgotten it." And if you give them the bank code, and they turn out to not be from Accounts Payable, basically that's a successful attack that's bypassed. I would say it could be hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars of IT security just by a simple phone call. And so without even having to worry about firewall, without even having to worry about antivirus, that's actually, that attack has been very successful. And quite frankly, there was one, I think earlier last year where somebody called a CEO and said, or emailed the CEO and said, we have a secret transaction we need to do. It's to prevent us from being taken over. So hush, hush, don't tell anybody. And so the CEO, because they had the keys to the city, actually authorized an $80 million bank transfer for this secret transaction, and it turned out to be hackers.
Was that the Swiss aircraft company?
They didn't say who it was, but yeah, I never saw attribution, so I'm not going to speculate. But yes, there was quite a bit of money and and it was publicly traded. So yeah, but I don't think I ever saw who. But yes, the $80 million deal just from a phone call. So yeah, quite frankly, the level of sophistication to jump from a virtual system to the host is pretty high, but it's possible. But there are much easier paths of attack, and kind of like water will find its own level. They're generally going to look for the weak points first.
Right. Another question. I'm running Windows. Do I have to worry about an Android? Hard to read this one. Android-based attack. I think they're worried about getting infected from their phone or from a mobile system.
So in the case of an iPhone or an Android that's attached to your system, as an example, some people use those as hotspots. Some people use them as file storage. There's probably a possibility. I'm not sure how likely it would be, but you could store anything that acts like a file system could store an attack, as an example. So if there is maybe as an example, maybe somebody sends you a video on Android and you say, "Oh, click on this video, it's awesome." So you click on that video. That's effectively opening a browser, even though the file is sort of shared, looks like shared music. If it's opening a browser, enter to win, this great contest for your favorite musical artist, that could take you to an attack. So there's a lot of different ways that could happen. But yes, if it's storing files like a file system, it could be a source of an attack. And again, the general responses are, do we have good antivirus and have we locked down the system properly?
My question actually. This one's from me. If you have, I'm running primarily Mac here in the office. We do have some PCs, but is not cryptoware, but is the ransomware cross-platform, or is it isolated to a particular platform? Or are there versions that are cross-platform?
Yeah, that's a great question, Patrick. I quite frankly have not seen any of these that have come up and said this is the operating system we're using. Generally, all the reports have been focused on how much money have we lost. But there is that sort of shared sort of mythos out there that Apple is safe and you don't have to run antivirus on Apple. iPhones are safe. You don't have to run antivirus on iPhones. There is that kind of branding out there. But in actuality, there's been successful attacks. I'm not aware of any ransomware attacks offhand, but there have been even briefly. There are some things that the Apple does that are very effective. They maintain their store, so the only way you can get to the store is through their vetting process. That's one. Number two, they maintain all of their operating system updates, and they actually control the hardware as well. So they have a fairly tight grip on the hardware, fairly tight grip on the software. Those are mitigating a lot of attacks. But there was an incident, I think it was 2015, where somebody was actually able to publish an infected software developer kit.
Ghost,
some
Ghost
of the Apple,
SDK,
the Ghost. What would you call it? I'm sorry.
I thought it was Ghost SDK or Ghost.
Yeah, Ghost SDK. Yeah. So from that point on, anybody who actually used Ghost SDK, that was a vetted Apple developer, could have been capable of publishing what looks like a healthy, everything's happy app update to the iTunes cloud, and they're already approved. That they could post some malware that way to the iTunes. That was pretty quickly caught and shut down. So those are good things. But yeah, I'd say anything's possible. We really have to err on the side of caution and say, yeah, everyone's at risk here.
Here's another one that just came in, and this one actually strikes close to me because I'm depending on this myself. So will AdBlock Plus block the ads that give someone CryptoWall 2.0? Because I know there have been some incidents recently of websites being seeded with malvertising, where the ads will, when they pop up or when they open, the ad itself will deliver ransomware to your system.
So I have to plead a bit of ignorance. I'm not sure I understand exactly how AdBlock Plus gets its information or how it decides what's good and what's bad. But I'm going to have to assume it's a blacklist, which is a form of saying, I've heard this is a bad site, don't go. So it fits into reputation sort of IT governance, really. So you only go to sites that you trust. You only go places that you know, and any place else is blocked. So you can lock things down to, here's the only sites I go to. I go to CNN and ESPN and nowhere else. But once you go to one of those sites, the next place you go off of those could be anywhere in the world, right? Any other site. So even those sometimes can get launch you someplace else. So the next question is, if you depend totally on that one tool and they're wrong, it doesn't matter. They were wrong. They were wrong, right? At one point, hackers only have to be right once. Everybody else has to be right 100% of the time. So relying totally on ad blocker as an example, and relying totally on whitelisting and blacklisting. Whitelisting, saying this is a great site, I always go here, I'm happy. iTunes, that's a great site, they're very protected, no problem. Any place else, I want to go there. So that's a blacklist. So the idea is that you have to err on generally we're talking IT governance, we're talking about defense in depth. We're talking about having more than one way to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. So AdBlock is great. It's a good strategy, but it can't be the only strategy. There's other things that need to be in place. Yep.
That's all the questions I've got. Alan, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have a question. I am, I guess, fortunate enough to have 12-year-old twin boys who don't listen to me and play like crazy on everything. And I try and have them focus in on their Apple phones, but I know they're going over the network. Have you heard of anything where attacks have been coming in through all the games that kids play, trying to get into larger systems and such? Or is that something that's too involved for the average hacker who I know is lazy and wants to find the easiest way in?
Well, that actually sounds like the easiest way in there, Alan. That could be that you could. Well, and congratulations on twin boys. So this may be a chance for you to have that father-son talk about malware. It's very important. And going to the right side.
You just read my mind.
So I'm thinking out loud here. I'm sorry, a bit unscripted, but that's a very good question. So the entire you have to think about this as there is sort of a thing where they talk about a really secure system is a system that's turned off and locked away. So the next level from there is a system that's not connected to anything. And unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, we live in an era where everything is connected. Nothing, everything is becoming web enabled. I saw something the other day. They have not for brand awareness, but Samsung's got a refrigerator that's connected to the internet, and now you can turn on the light inside and look at what's in the refrigerator while you're in the store, which I thought was really was pretty amazing. Amazing stuff. So we're really evolving to an era where everything is connected, including games, TVs, everything in our house is starting. What used to be the alarm clocks now are phones now connected to our heart rate monitor, so that, the phone now knows when we're awake and asleep. There's a lot of things that are really really interesting eras and really beneficial, but any one of those can be turned on its head. So that's kind of one of the risks that we have here, is that we're talking about a very fast evolving sort of threat that's very profitable, very difficult to stop without the proper controls, and it can follow you home. And that's really, if this was sort of a forum for consumer advice, I think the answer is assume the worst and make sure that, like all your vacation pictures and anything that you really care about, you back that up on a USB stick, throw it in a drawer someplace. Just and then maybe put that on the calendar when it's time to pay the electric bill. It's time to go around with a new USB stick and back it up again. So the idea is that if you've got backups, they normally say keep them in threes, at least three. So the hacker, if you start reusing a USB stick and you've got three of them and one of them happens to get infected, then the next thing, oh geez, I'm infected. Now I need to put this next USB stick in. Well, that can affect the second USB stick. So that's why it's important, I think, that once we're talking, I think, prevention, but then once somebody is actually attacked, you have to shift to cure. And shifting to cure means really disconnecting everything from that machine, maybe wiping it completely and restarting it from scratch, and then restoring your data. But frequently someone will try to put the recovery in before the virus is removed, and it just proceeds to infect your backup drives as you're trying to restore your files. So it's kind of a scary environment. But yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, is that a potential area of threat? Yes, but still we're at the same. I think everybody's at risk with this. As every hacker will go to great lengths to appear to be a normal transaction on the internet.
I have another question came in. It says, I have a Skype session scheduled later today. How do I know it's safe?
Patrick?
Yes. Kevin? Kevin, can you hear me? Kevin? I didn't mute myself. Alan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Kevin? Kevin, I can hear your phone moving around. I don't think you can hear me. I didn't mute anybody.
Well, let me answer that question. Right now, the attacks that are coming in to Skype are predominantly coming in by people asking for you to communicate with them. It's very important to keep a very tight control over who you Skype with and who is a communicator on Skype. If you do not know the person, decline. If you have not made arrangements with the person to open up the account, decline. If it's a Skype communication and there'll be new people on the call, it's best to find out beforehand who are the new people so that you'll only be letting in to your Skype session people that you have approved to begin with. It started about 3 months ago. We use Skype a great deal in our company, and I'm very surprised to see that I might get 6 or 7 attempts a day of people who I do not know and have the strangest names in the world wanting to communicate with me for some ungodly reason. And again, if you don't know them, decline. If that's somebody who really is trying to reach you, they'll call you on the regular phone and ask for your Skype address in order to develop a Skype session. Governance is the most important thing. You have to be careful. This is a war zone to a certain extent, and you have to be very careful who you let in the door.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, it looks like Kevin might have had a technical failure, or hopefully he didn't get ransomware. So for those of you that are attending, I thank you very much for attending. And before I have Alan give his closing comment, and hopefully Kevin will be able to get back on so he can give his closing comment. But for those of you who have attended, I will be sending a link to you for a very brief questionnaire, which is the opener for the free assessment, half-hour assessment, that because you attended, you are qualified for. And see what else. Again, I'll be sending you an email with a link. Just go to the link, fill out the questionnaire as candidly as possible. And it's only a few questions, and it's not really in depth. It's just to get a feel for how things are operating and how things are going. And when you hit the submit button, it will go directly to Alan Heyman, the CEO, and we will be in touch with you within 48 hours, I'm hoping, and get you scheduled for your half-hour assessment. And with that, I'm seeing that Kevin hasn't logged back in by phone yet. So, Alan, why don't you give me your closing comments, and hopefully by the end of it, Kevin will be back.
Okay, again, thanks everybody for attending. We hope that we are providing a public service that people are learning. We seem to be getting more and more people coming on board as every week we do these, so we seem to be doing something right. And again, if you get something that you have that tinge of curiosity, how come I'm getting that? How come this person who I haven't spoken to in years is trying to contact me? Geez, I just spoke to that person 6 months ago. How come I'm getting through to him now? Or he's getting through to me now? Delete. Or call them up by telephone to make sure there really is a true call.
Excellent.
Again,
Sounds
thank
like
you very
Kevin's
much.
back.
Yeah, so sorry. Everything just went dark, so I'm back now.
Excellent.
Oh, good, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so Kevin, why don't you give us your closing statement, and we'll wrap everything up.
So, in a nutshell, ransomware, malware, the number of attacks and potential attacks is growing day by day. Frequently, I think we become kind of numb to this because we're seeing, it's the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Well, in some cases, sky is falling. So if you think about it, what I usually try to get people to imagine is, what's the worst thing that you could lose in terms of your digital property? What is it that you really care about? What are the crown jewels? And if that's your vacation pictures, if that's your corporate minutes, whatever that is, it's worth spending some extra time to really look at those holistically and try to really get some expert advice. What's the best way to protect this, and how should I be able to test that I'm actually protected? So there's some common sense steps there. I think for advice,
one of the things, maybe just review quickly that the FBI is always saying, make backups, make more backups, make sure everything's up to date, patch. All of those are come up as high on the list of trying to prepare. But there's quite a few things that actually need to be covered, and quite frankly, maybe too many to do this in this format. But I think that's really the spirit of this, is that it really is time to prepare. The time to prepare is before the attack, not after, when they're starting to ask for money.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your attendance. And again, those of you who stuck with us throughout the entire thing will be getting the email with the link for the survey. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Alan, and especially thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate taking the time and sharing your knowledge base with us. And with that, everybody have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, SMR Group, and the audience.
Bye-bye.